Hi, Shannon Waller here, and welcome to Team Success. Today, I have an extra special author interview, partly because I'm one of the authors. So I am delighted to be here with my co-authors on our new book, Superpowered, Stephen Neuner and Ryan Cassin. We've just put out a book that we are all incredibly excited about because it opens up new possibilities for people that did not exist before and gives a whole new perspective and mindset on a very key who in your life. So the full title of the book is Superpowered, the secret that helps every entrepreneur eliminate the suck, 10x their impact, and have more fun in work and life. That is a heck of a promise. So we're going to jump into what the book is about, how you can take advantage of it, all the good things. But I'd like to get into how this started. And one of the things, we're all in Strategic Coach, we're all in 10X, and a couple of us are in Free Zone. This is a really powerful collaboration. And I was so delighted when you guys thought this would be a good idea. It was your idea. So let's talk about how this got started, because one of the things that's been true, Ryan, Stephen, from the beginning is how aligned we are and how we all want to be a hero to the same person. So Stephen, why don't you kick us off with how this whole process happened? Because I think it's kind of cool, kind of magical how this book came to be.
Yeah, happy to, and really grateful to be, celebrating this day. I think it's a really, really exciting time. We all love entrepreneurs, and we also love entrepreneurs as strategic coach. And I just think there's some real unlocks here for everyone. So Thanks, Shannon. In regards to how it began, you said so well, we're believers in strategic coach. Both Ryan and I have been in strategic coach for a long time. And for me, it's been the greatest investment, period, I've ever made in myself, hands down.
Wow.
So while I've experienced all these wonderful unlocks, one unlock that I was reluctant to take on early in my relationship was that of a executive assistant, or we called it strategic assistant of the program. My team staged an intervention and they helped me hire one. And we became consumers of a wonderful program called Strategic Assistant Program that you created. And so while Ryan's story is a little bit different, he was quicker to the punch and jumped right in and did it. We were both realized firsthand the value that exists in that program. And so when we grew and scaled and exited our business and realized that we had helped a lot of people with their assistance over the years, we wanted to make sure that we were delivering maximum value. And so we realized as people reach out to us that were friends of ours that were in Strategic Coach, that it was a must-have part of the program, must-have part of the solution. So that started with value creation there, freedom and growth expansion, and then ultimately that led to us having a conversation about what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So Ryan, talk about how this came to be for you, because you guys have been working together, actually providing this incredible capability to people.
Yeah, so I owned a business prior to this for a decade that I've since exited, but I, as Stephen said, got into Strategic Coach, and they talked on day one, sort of season 1, episode 1, you need a strategic assistant. And I said, okay, I'm in. If this is the recommendation and I want to get the most value out of my Strategic Coach experience and I want to quick start the heck out of it, I need to get a strategic assistant. And I got super lucky, right? I had a referral. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what to expect, how to train this person. And she was absolutely incredible. In fact, she's our chief happiness officer now at Superpower. She continues to work with us in a completely different role. But the transformation that I experienced from that, and Stephen, who was very generous, helped train up my new executive strategic assistant, and it was night and day. And I realized that once I'd sold that business and I looked back on the things that I felt really worked well, that really were changers for me personally, professionally, my strategic assistant was undoubtedly one of the biggest. And I realized that I had a passion for helping other entrepreneurs, and Stephen does as well. We partnered up on this shared vision that the success that we had, others could achieve as well by finding the right fit executive assistant for their team.
So that is actually what Superpowers does, right? That is your business.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We help successful entrepreneurs achieve new levels of freedom and growth. And that's the experience that we've had now for over 100 clients working over the last 2 years on this. And it's just incredible to see. I think you said it so beautifully. Yes, we're the 3 co-authors of this book, But really, the people who wrote this book are the clients that we've worked with in our respective businesses over the years, right? We had so many rich stories, so many incredible experiences, so many transformations that we witnessed and walked along in this journey that I think the book actually was really easy to kind of just pour out of ourselves and our experience.
I love that. And it's interesting because the other people who helped write it are our actual assistants, right? And they actually have a section of the book, which is almost my favorite part. We each have kind of like love letters to our brilliant assistants, and then we get to hear from their perspective. And I think in this conversation, I'd love to dismantle some of the myths that people have about why it's hard to have an assistant, why it's challenging. There's a lot of head trash, let's call it that gets in the way of people having a great partnership with someone. We actually lay out in the book, it's your process, not mine, exactly how to take from A to Z, how to make this a really successful relationship. Because each person has to grow. Each person has to get to know the other person and to make that partnership work. So I love that there's not only why this is a good idea, but a how to take action on it. I love practical things, and this book is super practical. And as you said, Ryan, there's so many stories and validations of, yes, this works. Look at what's possible that you didn't think was before. And I feel the same way about strategic assistants. In my very first one, it took so long for me to realize I didn't have an intervention, Stephen, but I knew that my growth was not going to go anywhere with what I myself could do. I was hitting a ceiling hard in terms of my own personal productivity. So finally I decided, okay, the amount of business I'm doing warrants one person invested in just me, not sharing someone with two other people, which is what I've done before, but in fact, just having that one person, and her name was Nicole. Totally lucked out, same as you, Ryan, just was blessed. And she trained me. In fact, there's a download that's available in our resources section that she wrote on how to work with someone like me, that she wrote so she wouldn't have to take so many phone calls on this relationship. But she trained me on how to be a great person with whom to work. And then when she transitioned to a whole other career, which I'm thrilled about, and we're still friends, I'm actually having lunch with her this weekend. And now I have another strategic assistant, also genius, brilliant, and probably in some ways, because of how she's configured for Colby and other things, even more suited for the role, which is kind of amazing. So I just feel incredibly lucky to that process. So, yeah.
I love the story of how your assistant kind of coached you up and helped you understand how to work best with them. I was just talking with Steven, and it's like, okay, we started a business to help entrepreneurs and we're going to coach the assistants, right? But in reality, we started a business that hired the assistants, but coached the entrepreneurs. And that's exactly the raw material of where the book came from, is because, there's a lot to train on the executive assistant side, but there's a ton to train on the entrepreneur side if you've never hired in this role before.
100%. So let's go back a little bit just to make sure I want to dot all the I's and cross all the T's. So we had been talking, we all realized that we were aligned on who we wanted to be a hero to as one of the key facets of a collaboration. And then we did a podcast series. Stephen, can you talk about this? Because you had, through the assistant program and some other things, realized that there really was this alignment. So can you tell kind of how it evolved from that point of what you guys were doing with hiring assistants and then how it progressed into this book?
Yeah. Well, so what we noticed, both personally and with some of the other people that we had introduced to the strategic assistant program, was that there was a real linkage, right? Mind shifts that occur in the workshop. We have the best ideals, intentions, what we're going to go out and achieve over the next quarter. And then, what's the evidence? How do we actually get traction with the ideas and move them forward? And so the strategic assistant was such a big unlock. And when we were growing and seeing the impact of that role and momentum was catching on, we realized that there was a real opportunity for some of the things we've created and some of the things you've created to come together. And that initially started with just a single podcast episode. Right. And what was really cool about it, Dan always talks about value creation, understanding the R factor DOS. Well, we'd spent our entire career, not just like Hair Club for men members. We were the founders. Like, we've lived this my entire career, Ryan's career. We've served entrepreneurs, strategic coach, EO, YPO, like we've been there. And so realizing that and hearing the feedback from that podcast episode, we realized that we had really, hit a nerve for people and that there was a lot left on the table in regards to mind shifts that could occur. And so that's when I came to you, after Ryan and I talked about it, it's like, hey, I think there's more. We're hearing the feedback, we're hearing appreciation and gratitude, and we're getting more questions. And so that's where the podcast series came, which then, again, going back to R Factor DOS, hearing that, we realized that there was a tremendous opportunity, not just to create new value together through this book for people that would be in coach, but for really any entrepreneur that's looking to take that relationship and go to the next level. And it's just such an important relationship.
I love it. What I'd like to do is contrast how most entrepreneurs approach the idea of an assistant. I'm not even going to say executive or strategic right now, just an assistant. Just take the standard traditional mindset for a second. And you've heard all the pain points and we've all experienced them too. Like it required your team coming to you, Stephen, to go, hey, at this point you've leveraged us up, but you're not leveraged and you're the bottleneck. So you need someone, and then finding you someone, which was amazing. So let's talk about the traditional mindset of someone who isn't sure they need an assistant. They think they should do all the stuff. They're at that ceiling that I was talking about. Let's talk about where most people start, and then we'll talk about what's possible. But what's holding people back? What would you both say to that?
Yeah, so I would say that they start with what we talk about in the subtitle of the book, the suck, right? Their inbox is overflowing. They've got double bookings. They're showing up unprepared for meetings. They're in constant state of fire drill. And we create the suck as entrepreneurs. That's the very definition of what happens when we stay out of our unique ability, right? And do things that are disjointed with the things that we should be doing. And so just to be completely candid, I mean, the way that most people show up when they're looking for an executive assistant is in a state of resignation or desperation. And one of the really cool, I think, ideas that we explore in this book is a superpowered scale, which I know we can talk some more about. We'll nerd out on that. But the reality is that most entrepreneurs show up in the worst possible, least collaborative, lowest energy state to go make one of the most important, most influential, most meaningful hires they're going to make in their business. And so you come at this from completely different energy levels and you set up for failure, right? And more often than not, when we're talking to folks, they're in a bad way and they need help and they're ready to finally break the glass and pull the fire alarm. Now, one of the things that we really just as like a mindset shift try to encourage before we ever start working with anybody is this idea of investment, right? And I think there are like 3 different investment levels you can make here, right? There's the low investment, see it as a cost, right? And that's your very inexpensive $4 an hour VA, right? And we see lots of people burn out with that approach. We talk to a lot of folks who are ready to make the investment of money. They're ready to open up the pocketbooks and say, hey, I'm ready to do this right. And I'm ready to invest in it because I know the ROI will be positive. And so we already get them in that mindset. What we have to shift them into is, are you ready to make the investment of time? Because that more than anything else early on in the relationship is going to set the trajectory for success or failure. And so that's the shift that you have to make. You have to commit that this is going to be a new working relationship that you have to invest in, that the swiping the credit card is the easy part. And we help, create structure and predictability and flow around this. But regardless of you're working with someone or you're doing it on your own, only you can make the decision that you're going to invest the time to grow that relationship.
And Ryan, I remember one of the stories from the book is that you had hired someone new, but it was an incredibly busy first, 2 to 4 weeks of your life. Describe what it was like for you.
Yeah, well, I was literally the person I just described, right? I was burnt out and I was buried under work. And so I hired a relief valve and did not invest in the time to grow that relationship. Didn't give Amber an opportunity to know me, to understand me, never put her in a position to anticipate me. And because it was so busy, when things were going wrong, I would sort of mentally catalog them and just want a quick start, move on to the next thing, keep focused on the future. We're all about building toward the vision. And inevitably, at some point, you'd hit the breaking point where all that feedback would come out in a tsunami, right? And I'm showing up as my worst self, and Amber's not realizing that there are things that have gone wrong because I haven't given her the gift of the feedback along the way in the moment. and it just sets you sideways. I mean, obviously anyone listening to that could recognize that that's going to be an unproductive thing to do. But in the moment, you just kind of try to keep moving forward and hope that it magically gets better on its own. And that's not how relationships work, and certainly not one as important as executive assistant.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Stephen, what about you? What's your take on people's mindset before they, I mean, it's great if people can get there before they reach the breaking point, but that isn't always the case.
Yeah, well, I think Ryan gave a great illustration of one example. Mine, I shared a little bit of it, but what I didn't realize it till after I brought on my team member, that really I had an imposter syndrome, not good enough. I had head trash and sort of fog of war that was in the way, right? No one in my circle immediately would have said, oh, you're afraid to invest in yourself or take a risk or whatever. But deep down, I knew that I was underperforming. And it was like letting someone into my world that was going to see all the ways that I sucked, right? In my mind. Again, this is the battle of the mind, the battlefield of the mind. And so as I got into that and made the commitment and started to unlock, I started to realize it. And that thread, interestingly, that's why I think this is such a powerful hire. Even if someone is like reading this book and they already have a great executive assistant, it's still just a great lesson on leadership. That same mindset was affecting me all around me and all these different hires and all around our business and the opportunities we were pursuing. But sort of getting clear on that, removing and clearing the head trash, I think is a really important thing for people to do.
You raised such a great point. It's actually even a new aha for me, even after writing the book with you all. And a shout out to Carrie Oberbrunner and Igniting Souls and Lynn, our actual writer on the book. There's no way that we would have produced a book this quickly without her help. We'd still be working on draft chapter 1. So there's a shout out to the teamwork for that too. But you just raised such a great point, Stephen, and that is that you have to be willing to let people in to what is not always a pretty front stage. It's your backstage, and backstages are messy by definition. If you think about a theater or you think about your office, it's kind of messy. And there is that willingness and courage, I guess is probably the best word, the commitment to do something different and the courage to let people in that allows that transformation to work. And again, I've said this before, but one of the most important chapters to read in the book is the chapter written by all of our, I call them support partners. We've used strategic assistant, executive assistant. We have all the names for it. Entrepreneurial executive assistant. It's one of my faves.
Crucial who. And that is when you understand the mindset of a really great who in this role, they love supporting you. They actually live for it. They're very smart. They're very intentional about who they support. And I feel honored when people choose to provide that incredible amount of intelligent capability, support, organization, research, you name it, all the stuff I have no mental energy for. And they choose to give that to me. I'm like, lucky me is how I feel about it. And when you actually understand that those stuff that you don't like to do, that you're messy at, that you find complex, you don't have the mental energy, as I said, to do it, there are other people who live for this stuff. It's not messy for them. It's not trash for them. It's not a crappy thing to do. It's actually what they're really, really good at. And I think that's one of the mindset shift that's so powerful to make, is that what we love to do, other people hate. Like I've just been doing a ton of speaking. All of our support partners do not want to be doing what we do for a living, right? But they are very happy doing all the other stuff. Ryan.
And I think that that's one of the things that we key in on the book, right? The entrepreneurial executive assistant. Okay. So the executive assistant, strategic assistant, we talked about this, but what does it mean to be entrepreneurial in nature? And the book talks quite a bit about this, but there were two things that really stood out to me. Mm-hmm. The first was what you were describing there, that motion of delegating up. Right? The tendency to want to look as like we're delegating down all these things that are not our unique ability. But when you're giving those tasks, like managing the inbox, managing the calendar, delegating projects, making sure you're following up to get things done, making sure you're prepared for meetings and have those resources at your fingertips. When you're giving that to someone who that's their unique ability, they're bringing their creativity, their passion, their energy to it. And you're getting not just the result you expected, right? The version you're capable of creating on your own. You're getting a version created by someone who that's their unique ability. It's substantially better. So that's the first thing. And the second thing about an entrepreneurial executive assistant is that they're going with you on the growth journey. right? They understand from day one that you're on a growth journey personally and professionally, that if we talked a year, 3 years, or 10 years from now, your world is bigger. And ideally, you hire for this role once and that person goes with you the whole way.
Mhm.
And so getting it right on the front end to find somebody who has that hunger, who has that desire to grow and learn, and who sees new challenges as opportunities, not roadblocks, that's so critically important. And we talk a lot about that in the book.
We do. And one of the things that I have learned, and it took me a long time, and I actually was in my speech that I gave yesterday, said the same thing, is like, we have to appreciate, like, people are smart. Like, the people we're talking about are highly intelligent. And guess what they don't like to do? Get bored. So the difference, to my mind, for an entrepreneurial executive assistant, they are highly intelligent is one of the things, because we've got fast brains. We need other people with fast brains, right? So one of the big dangers for them, and I actually have heard this from both Nicole and Katrina, what happened with your previous roles? I got bored. I maxed out everything I could do, contribute, and then there wasn't a growth path. Well, here's what entrepreneurs are so brilliant at doing: not be boring. Like, Katrina's never been bored. Neither has Nicole. And so it's like, I know I can promise that because I'm always up to some new crazy project. And I think that growth path part, Ryan, is so critical, and we don't appreciate it. And I don't think people know that there are incredible entrepreneurial executive assistants out there that actually strive and are hungry for new, cool, interesting projects to get organized, to systematize, to arrange. But they are. That's exactly what they're looking for, and we are the perfect people to provide it. Yep.
And I love that you mentioned, Shannon, that people don't know, right? And so why did this continue to go on to where it is now, which is a book, right? Is that hopefully we're unlocking and unleashing a movement because we're shining light. We called in the book, in the title, the secret that helps every entrepreneur eliminate the suck, 10x their impact, and have more fun in work and life. The secret is kind of like a weird one for some people, but I think a lot of people are just unaware of what the potential of this role can be, right? And who these people are that want to go along that journey with you because they enjoy the backstage. They're not going to demand attention for themselves. And oftentimes they're supporting a really incredible entrepreneur that honestly, we can get blinded by the glare. We just see the amazing entrepreneur, but we don't realize all the people that this great support partner that makes that entrepreneur as great as they are. And we experience them.
100%. So let's talk about what the transformation looks like. So once you get out of that, I'm going to call it mechanistic. I tried that once. It was terrible. Oh my God, you had to explain everything. I could have done the task by the time I was done explaining it. Anyway, by the time you actually grasp the fact that you are worth investing in, because the money is really an investment in you, right? And that you deserve that kind of support and leverage. What's possible when you have that level of support? So we've talked about the kind of mechanistic, old, delegating down way of doing it. What's possible with the kind of superpowered assistant that we're talking about? And I love the stories that came out of the book because I learned more about you, Stephen. I learned more about you, Ryan. I had new ideas for me. It was like, I didn't even know this was possible. And I created the strategic assistant program in 1995, right? So who knew that there was even a higher level? So I learned a lot from both of you. So let's talk about the other side. And Ryan, we might want to go through this scale at some point soon. We've talked about, being depressed, super stressed about it. But let's talk about what superpowered looks like and how life looks in really specific, concrete ways. What is now possible? What's the unlock?
Yeah, I'll take your lead on that. Maybe now would be a great time to talk about this scale that we put in the book, from going from super stressed to super powered and what that looks like. At the lowest level, you have resignation. And this is where you're super stressed, right? So there's no hope, there's no creativity. You've lost sight of why you started the business in the first place. So it feels like throwing in the towel is the only thing you can do, right? Next up, you have desperation. And this is the verge of burnout, right? And what we see a lot with desperation is burnout and broken promises. It feels like things are breaking. It feels like things are off course, and you're looking for distractions. And usually the way that shows up for entrepreneurs is oftentimes it's sabotaging relationships, both personal and professional. Next up is frustration. And that's where you're striving and striving and working so hard. You're running faster and faster and faster, and you're not seeing results. And so what you end up doing is you settle for average, and living below your potential and what you think is possible, it pulls you down and you start to slide down that scale. Eventually you move to delegation and you realize that you can't do it alone, right? You can't grow alone. And really, this is where you see all of that 2x level of growth, especially early on in our entrepreneurial journeys where we begin to delegate and understand what an unlock that is. That's where we hit 2x. But real transformation happens at the superpowered level of the scale. And that's where you get the 10x growth. That's where the tension between freedom and growth dissolves. You're no longer trading freedom for growth or growth for freedom. You're getting both. Mm-hmm. And that's really what the book is all about, is how do we get to that superpowered level where the transformation is possible? I would think about it two ways. Yes, absolutely. There are concrete ways that your executive assistant shows up when you're superpowered and you're going on 10x growth. But the thing that I think is the really interesting thought experiment that, we ask people to do in the book is just imagine you have that right who. Mm-hmm. And that you're in the superpowered level and there is no longer a fight between freedom and growth, and that you have the freedom to be in your unique ability all the time. What's possible for you? What could you be doing if you had the freedom to be able to pursue your unique ability to its highest level? Mm-hmm. And I think, frankly, that's where some of the most exciting, most inspiring, most magnetizing sort of ideas come from, is like, that's my North Star. That's what I want to drive to. That's what gets me up out of bed in the morning, because I'm pursuing this much larger vision than I thought was possible before.
One interesting thought about that is that it actually ends up being, as you were asking that question, I started thinking about it for myself, and it actually means you're doing less. You are doing fewer things. Right? You're doing one or two things that you love to do with your very best audience. So unique ability, quick definition from a strategic coach term, is what you love to do and do best. Where you're a hero, where you have the biggest impact. That is your unique ability. And it fuels you. You might be physically tired at the end of the day, but in every other way, you are lit up. It is fun. Your eyes light up. You're like leaning in. So that's unique ability. But even as you were saying that, I'm like, I want to do this and I want to do this. And so just the freedom from having to do all of the other things to narrow in on our unique abilities is such a gift. And then your future gets so much bigger and so much brighter, and new things become possible that never were before.
Yeah. And you're describing the shift from doing more to doing more of the things that are in your unique ability.
Right. Oh, good distinction. I love that. Stephen, what are your thoughts on being superpowered?
Well, I think before we jumped on, you told us about an experience you just had speaking at the US conference and just how much fun you had, right? And I think that I love the shorthand of when your work can become your play.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just an expression of who you are, and you get to show up and you're in your best self, and you get to show up that way in your business. But what I love that we also tackle in this book is not just how this shows up and what's possible to 10x your business from this mindset. This book really dives into the ways that you can 10x your life, become super powered in life by applying the same thinking and mindset to your personal life and having all the unlocks there of that intentionality and that transformation, your personal relationships.
Stephen, this was one of the things that I was like, whoa, I had no idea I could even think of that way. Can you share some of the ways that you're brilliant? Let me just explain support partner for a second. That is my actual official title for Nicole and for Katrina, is I want a support partner. So I need someone who has that supportive mindset, which, by the way, is actually a personality trait. There are people on the planet, in fact, a lot of them, who love supporting. Thank goodness, because that's not me. But I want a partner. I want someone who is just as strong and capable and experienced in their areas of capability as I am in mine. And I want us to link together, which is really how I think of this superpowered relationship. It's not, we'll put it this way, I shouldn't manage a thing. I need someone to manage me, not the other way around, which is exactly what Katrina does. Manages my schedule, my projects, my email. I'm never double booked. I know what I'm supposed to be doing when, and I do a lot of presentations, and she's got it all lined up for me. She, looks ahead and cleans up behind. It's miraculous as far as I'm concerned. It has tripled, if not quadrupled, my productivity, this level of support. But that's the work side. Stephen, share with me some of the things that you have your support partner do for your personal life, because I'm in awe I need to take a page out of your book. So this was pretty eye-opening for me.
Yeah, well, again, there's so many things that just apply. We just don't give ourselves permission to make the investment in ourselves to have these unlocked, right? So just a few of the ways, workshop one, strategic coach, lifetime extender. One of the things that's really important to me is I want Corey and I to be best friends, love, laughter, fun in our relationship, right? So the things that I did to get my wife to say yes, I've got to keep doing them if I want to keep her. But we have multiple businesses now, multiple kids. I've got horses and donkeys and our other bit. I mean, there's always stuff going on, right? And so I want to show up that way. And so I have we have a playbook called the Better Husband Playbook. And what it is basically I give my assistant all of my wife's favorite things, right? So favorite restaurant, she likes farm to table. She likes these bands, this kind of music. She likes to shop here, By the way, don't let me forget Valentine's Day. It comes every year, not things that I purposely would neglect, but I get so enrolled in what I'm doing that sometimes I just lose sight. And so my assistant gives me a monthly report of all the things coming up over the next 30 days that I could take action on that would show. It doesn't guarantee at the end of my life, my wife and I have a great marriage, but it gives, evidence to my wife every week on our date night that I'm continuing to bring the creativity to our relationship. And I value her just as much, if not more, than I did when we first got together. And so I have that. I have that for my children, although their interests update more often. So car shows in town. Well, now it's a car show. Now it's Legos for my son or Pokemon. It's always changing, right? And so applying that, having a monthly, someone looking out for me, helping me create value, that's just one of the ways, right? Just one of the ways. The other one people are always shocked by, that's in the book, and we talk about this, is my Better Friend Report. I am blessed to have friends that are older than me and younger than me. And some of my younger friends like to do all their invites through technology versus, you used to get invitations in the mail to important things like weddings or baby showers. And so I literally missed one from a friend that I would have definitely wanted to show up. And so my assistant goes on and she follows my favorite friends and gives me a report of what's happening in their life. I'm the one that's still replying, but I don't have to go through the political ads, which is a ton of them right now, right? I don't have to go through all the other, nasty, arguments or what did Shannon Waller eat for breakfast this morning? I just literally get to get down to and I'm always in touch with the most important things. And then she helps me take action on gifts, gift giving, making sure I have time blocked to call and say, hey, Shannon, congratulations, high five, And so it's just pulling that thread and applying that same type of systems thinking to really unlocking freedom and growth in your personal life, because all of that requires time and horsepower that we don't always have as entrepreneurs.
That is so brilliant. Right. You talked about best self. It's like then we get to show up in best self everywhere. Right. And you and Corey have a phenomenal relationship. And I'm sure a lot of people listening right now are like, oh, I could use that playbook. Right? Husband or friend. That would be really good, because it's easy to miss stuff. And we do get hyper focused on our thing. And it's very easy to shut out the rest of the world. Even we compromise health. Actually, let's talk about health for a second, because I know that's something else that gets scheduled for you, right, Stephen?
Yeah. So long story for another episode, but I have some rough experiences early in life with doctors and stuff like that. So that created a reluctance for me. And so as an accountability partner, I have let my assistant into that world. Right. She makes sure I go to them. She makes sure, that inside tracker, personal fit, training, all of that connects. And even when I'm going to have gaps, like other opportunities to order in meals, stuff like that, to keep me on track with my most important health goals.
Wow. Oh, I just love this. To my mind, what it actually enables is a better, but also longer and more successful. I was going to say entrepreneurial life. It's life in general. But just think about your relationship. You've got things stacked in your favor. You've got health things happening. You're going to the doctor's appointments. You're making sure you're working out. You're making sure you're eating well. We talk about our 4 freedoms of time, money, relationship, and purpose is all supported by health and well-being.
Yeah.
We actually reference that in the book. And sometimes if it's not our favorite thing to do, we're going to push it off or not put it on the calendar. I don't know about you guys. I live by my calendar. People look at my calendar and they want to throw up, because it's pretty much every moment is blocked off for something, but that works. I know exactly what I'm doing. It's tailored for my energy level. I like to hop across the lily pads. Don't let me sit for any one on too long. I'll sink. But it's done. So if it's in my calendar, I'll do it. But if it's not, I won't. So that just makes so much sense to me, Stephen. Love it.
And so many of those things are hidden. I mean, since we're talking about secrets, right? I mean, those are hidden things that we can invest in that seem almost like imperceptible in the moment, right? Like faith is important to me. So quiet time in the morning, like actually being consistent with that, working out. They seem like such small things, but stacked over decades, right?
Yeah.
Which I've had the privilege of having this relationship at this level for decades now. Like the transformation that comes from that and the ripple effect, the exponential impact is unreal.
Mm-hmm. So this is what's possible when we're super powered. Ryan, you talked a lot about the growth that's possible, both for the wonderful strategic entrepreneurial assistant, but also for the entrepreneur. So one of the things I realized, like what I can achieve as an individual is like here, is this high, but I reach a capacity. There's only so much that one individual can do. I don't care how good you are, how smart, how energetic, how little you sleep. There's still a limit. And then to be able to grow, you have to have leverage. And most people think about their, heads of different departments or their teams. But when you actually have that personal leverage, it is amazing just how much more is possible for you. So Ryan, how do you see or experience that? Being superpowered.
Yeah, I would just use superpowers and as an owner in that business as the live fire example, right? Mm-hmm. I guess I would put it this way. I still am a chronic sufferer of the competent activities for me, right? And excellent activities for me. So there's a lot that I could do. And, in a past life as a bootstrap one guy entrepreneur, there's a lot you have to do, right? And you develop competent and excellent activities every single day. And at some point, the thing that allowed you to create the business and get it started from nothing in the first place, that kind of mindset holds you back from being able to grow it to the next level, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'll give you one example. In my past life in the digital marketing world, creating websites and coming up with designs and content and everything else was, my everyday, right? It'd be something that you would do routinely. And I was dreading doing that for the Superpowered book. And because it's not my unique ability and I know better, but it's also one of those excellent activities where I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to be the one to do it, right? And to her credit, Leslie saw the freight train, the Mack truck coming down straight toward us. The lights were getting brighter as this deadline loomed for it to get done. And she jumped in without me ever talking to her about it, without ever asking about it. She said, this is something that's slipping because it's not Ryan's unique ability, but he feels like he's the one for some reason. He's got it in his head. He's the one who has to do it. And she didn't talk about it with me, and she didn't project manage it with me and come up with a game plan of here are the milestones we're going to hit. And here's how you take this big project and break it down into something manageable for you, Ryan. She didn't manage me. She said, no. I know we have a designer. I know we have a developer. I know that I could just jump in and at least get a first draft of this thing that I could then get edits and ideas from. And so without even asking, just because she's been in my inbox and a part of every single conversation and on every Zoom call about this book from day one, she jumped in, created an amazing website for the book from scratch, got all the resources together, coordinated the team, and I'm just blown away. It's like, I think my version would have been worse. It's incredible. And so that's just one example. And you use that one example as an illustration of, you could multiply that times 1,000 in any business. All the things that we could do or even are really good at doing, but aren't our unique ability. And that gives me time to do these sorts of things, hang out with you and share our ideas or think about the ways we're going to grow the business and just have that free space to get the clarity to really understand, okay, here's what next looks like for us. And here's how we're going to go from point A to point B and grow this thing.
What a phenomenal story, which is the first time I've heard this. So that is great. Thank you. I'm very appreciative of that initiative. Yeah, and she really has an entrepreneurial attitude, like to take initiative, take action, not always wait for permission.
Didn't ask permission.
How much do I love that? Like, ask for forgiveness, but at this point you're like, oh, thank God you did that, because otherwise I would have been behind the 8 ball. And again, freeing you out to do the more fun things, the more creative things for you. The interesting thing is what we don't find fun, other people do. Like Katrina's analogy or metaphor, whatever it is, for my calendar is playing Tetris. She's a master Tetris player. My calendar is a creative act, just saying. So are yours. But for me, it's a pain in the butt. There's nothing about calendaring that I enjoy other than just doing what I'm supposed to do. So I think if we can just really appreciate that we have some unique skills and talents, but other people have complementary ones, and allowing that freedom into the system to be supported, we do not have to do everything ourselves, is just huge. So what I'd like to talk about next is, and you've kind of given us a great lead in, Ryan, is what is it like for our people? What is it like for our assistants? What have we seen and observed and learned? Because I have such a deep appreciation. Once I finally figured out that I wanted a support partner, yes, you have to hire for executive assistant because that's the term in the world. But once you have that person, it is a partnership. But let's talk about them for a second. What are some of your favorite stories? You know, you've talked about different people, Stephen, Fern, and others. What do you love about them? What do you appreciate about them? What do you see as possible?
Yeah, we could do an entire hour-long podcast with Amber, our chief happiness officer, because she sees these stories literally every single day.
Yeah.
I would say the most fulfilling part is that you see impact on both sides of the table. You see the growth and development and the opportunity for the executive assistant who gets challenged and feels valued and gets fulfillment, right? And you see the entrepreneur obviously get all the freedom and the growth and the things that we've unlocked. I mean, we have had executive assistants that go on to, Amber's a great example of this, right? She runs the day-to-day in our business because she had so much potential. She grew, and we see growth in our EAs literally every day. New responsibilities, new roles, new people to report to. Entrepreneurial executive assistants have a way of integrating in every corner of your organization really quickly. So it is a fun growth story, and it's just really fulfilling to see the way that people change and evolve and grow in the role. I think for me personally, the most fun thing has become how my executive assistant becomes a friend, someone I joke with, someone who's really easy to talk to, someone I look forward to being on the calendar for, even just something as trivial as a 15-minute daily sync that we do, right? I'm looking forward to those conversations. She works in the Philippines, and she sent me a photo from her trip to South Korea, and there was this big Texas street. You know, she's standing under the sign of Texas Street in South Korea and sending it back to me, you know, celebrating her time away. And she knows I'm in Texas, obviously, and she's invested in my story as well. And that's really cool to have somebody who's rooting you on that way.
That's such a great point. And also, our lives can be chaotic. They can be really busy. And to have the consistency of that daily sync, and we'll touch briefly on some of the things to do to make it work and what would screw it up. But the daily sync is one of those things. Katrina is my consistent person that I talk to the most frequently of anyone in my entire week, right? And I talk to a lot of people. So for me, having that consistency, stability, she's my buddy, she's my partner, she's got my back, and I've got hers. That's the other part of it, is huge. We need a little bit of stability so that we can go off and do our crazy things. And I think that's an overlooked part of it. It's just really great to have that who there for you. Stephen, talk about some of your fabulous support partners you've had.
Yeah, well, I mean, there have been a couple that have just really stood out. And I'll share this. One of the things, to Ryan's point on both sides of the table, that I love, and I think we really give a lot of handles for people to experience this, whether they ever, you know, experience superpowers or not, is the growth occurring together.
Right.
So that it just strengthens in this beautiful relationship. And first and foremost, I could not speak highly enough than the original support partner I had is Fern Knable. Mm-hmm. She was literally, in a lot of ways, her and Amber's relationship, Ryan's first executive assistant, was the inspiration for Superpowers. The way that they really, really grew together, the community that they continued to grow of executive assistants supporting people, they literally demonstrated the value and need for it before we ever formalized and created it. And so just to see that, see the impact in my life, the unlocks, the sanity that was added to my family, all really, really just rich stuff in the best kind of way.
That is super cool. Not unlike what you were talking about, Ryan, some of your support partners have gone on to other roles within your organizations. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this has been one of the really cool things is that we see, you know, somebody who's a phenomenal part-time assistant working for one of our clients becomes a member of the hiring team. We add an extra, you know, half to their day. And it's really interesting. And we're trying to do a lot more of this because that person then sees what is expected in the day to day of the people that they then hire in their afternoon or morning shift, right? Their other shift. So there's that, there's the coaching piece of it and the community piece. We're big believers, and we talked about this in the previous podcast, that the big overarching unlock is curriculum, coaching, and community. So we've got, former executive assistants who are now in the curriculum development or now in the coaching, right? Helping one-on-one use their experience to grow and elevate the next generation of executive assistants, or leading our community, helping provide that support, that resource connection, that one-on-one facilitation with other EAs who have experience shares that are relevant. So to really get the most out of this role, there's this whole support layer that we found to be very valuable to help feed that growth engine of the executive assistant. Because on the one hand, your growth, your vision is going to be the leader in the executive assistant's growth and development. But, having somebody there to help continue to feed and develop and coach up the person is really valuable too.
It's interesting, like Strategic Coach is a community of entrepreneurs, but why did I start the team programs? Because team members also need communities, and that's where the Strategic Assistant program came in. And then you also have created that community for the EAs that you find and provide and support people. So that's kind of amazing, is like to try and do this on your own in isolation as an entrepreneur or as an executive assistant is incredibly challenging. So the fact that you've actually created, the whole coaching and the curriculum, I think is really powerful. And so that people are not left isolated, because there are challenges. Entrepreneurs are not the easiest humans to work with. So getting ideas, getting strategies can be just enlightening and help provide that high level of support that we're talking about. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And we lay down in the book some really great frameworks to help great entrepreneurs honestly protect them from their own selves. Because soon as we start to get freedom in this relationship, we want to move to an ideal. It's very easy to fall into the gap. And so having really great frameworks to help the assistant know where they're tracking and help the entrepreneur know what's reasonable for them to be tracking is super powerful, right? And very, very healthy for both people as they're trying to create this partnership, because it is a secret. The entrepreneur is probably not doing it very often. So it's just really hard to get institutional knowledge of where someone should be in the journey.
That is such a great point. Like, hopefully you don't have to do this very often. I've done it twice in 11 years. Katrina and I just celebrated our 3rd year anniversary together, which is amazing. And I did it before that for 8.5 years with Nicole. So yeah, it is a secret because we don't remember. And you have this great crawl, walk, run pattern that you help people run through, which you are masters at. Entrepreneurs are not, because they don't have to do it very often. So let's just talk briefly about what does that look like, because it's really about managing expectations on both sides and making sure that people maximize the opportunity and, frankly, don't mess it up, because we're all capable of doing that. Ryan?
We want it all. We want it right now. And it's like, go, go, go. I slid my credit card. It's like going to the gym. It's like, hey, I paid my membership. Why don't I have the 6-pack yet? Right. And so we hire a personal trainer to be like, hey there, buddy. Here's what you need to do to get the 6-pack. And you can expect that if you keep doing it and you keep working at it, you're going to get the 6-pack in, this amount of time. It's a very similar idea. So 30, 60, 90, yeah. This is the critical quarter of growing your entrepreneurial executive assistant relationship. In the first 30 days, know you. Does your assistant understand your calendar, your cadence, your process, your flow, what your business is, who your family is, who key clients or vendors are, right? Just all of the facts about you and where you're going to work together, right? Like just that universe of facts. Mm-hmm. The second 30 days, so at 60 days, understand you. So when I say, hey, Leslie, could you email Shannon about that one thing with the book, mm-hmm. which isn't a whole lot of detail, Leslie has enough context and understanding to say, oh yeah, I know what you're saying, Ryan. Communication becomes less full of friction, right? It becomes easier just to begin to leverage that relationship. And then the final 30-day onboarding, the 90-day mark, we're saying you should anticipate me. right? Like you should be able to know me and understand me well enough to see around the corner, to say, hey, this is coming down the pike. You've got a book launching and there's no website. I anticipate that could be a problem for you. And so anticipate me is that higher level where the proactive nature of the executive assistant begins to show up, where they begin leading you in this relationship more than you lead them.
Thank you for saying that. I have to tell you, it is so fun to be led. And we do not give that up easily. We are incredibly independent minded. We like to do things our way. Thank you very much. This is why we don't work for anyone else. We'd be the world's worst employees. The Strategic Coach formula for creating value is providing leadership, relationship, and creativity. Leadership is providing direction. And in your area of expertise, absolutely. Don't try and create value doing something you're bad at. Then that didn't work very well. But this is what they're an expert in. They can see what's coming and you're not paying attention to that. They're like, hey, train, right? And can I help? And it is so lovely. I remember, and I think I tell the story in the book too, one of the first meetings, because Nicole had said, do you ever sit down with your person? Because I was sharing someone with 2 other humans. By the way, one person supporting 3 people, it gets to be a little crazy because everyone has different personalities. It is very hard to be successful if for one assistant supporting 3 entrepreneurs or leaders. Don't do that. To have it be a one-on-one, in case anyone's wondering about that. But she said, does anyone sit down with you to go through your calendar and your projects? I'm like, no. She goes, great, I'll organize a meeting. So we went off site, and who's used to being in charge of meetings? Me. So I start. She goes, hang on a second. I prepared an agenda. And I was like, oh, I literally sat back and she was in charge and I was delighted. It was such a relief to have someone else provide leadership, relationship, and creativity about my stuff, all stuff that's important and relevant to me and interesting. But she was in charge. It was like, this is awesome. I want more of this. So it is so nice to be led. You know, you're both aligned on wanting the same thing. You just bring very different talents and skills to it. So with very few people, we are willing to give up our being in charge all the time, but it's actually incredibly relaxing. And again, I want to be managed, not the other way around. So highly recommend if you've never experienced it, just try it. You'll be delighted. Stephen?
And Shannon, just think if that experience hadn't happened to you, right? It was Nicole. Just think if Nicole hadn't done that, right?
Yeah.
And that's the danger of that I was talking to you earlier of like having tracks to run upon, because a lot of entrepreneurs start to get freedom, but maybe they don't experience that. But then they're so protective of it because they were dying and gasping for air that they start, like playing small and people pleasing and doing those things instead of standing for, no, this is the vision. This is where I'm trying to go. Right. And so they then, in a sense, settle, even though it's better than it used to be, they're settling for a faux freedom. They're not unlocking the full potential and power of the relationship.
A faux freedom.
Yeah.
That's good. I love that term. I'm going to be stealing that one. And I think it's interesting, as we're talking, one of the things that's striking me is there's some people who are like super stressed. And the whole idea of getting an assistant is even confronting, right? And I think hopefully this conversation will coax you, if that's you, into another level. But then there's the kind of, I think, common element is someone, they have like an okay, it's that middle range, Ryan, that you were talking about earlier, where they're kind of, what's the word? It's not frustrated, but it's...
Yeah, I mean, there's sort of that delegation 2x level of growth phase.
Exactly. And one of the things I find most exciting about the picture that we painted, and this is mostly thanks to the 2 of you, is that here's actually what the 10x, here's what the exponential, here's what growth and freedom looks like. You do not have to compromise either one. And so a lot of folks are at this level. So if you're super stressed, great, this will open your eyes. But also if you have what you would consider the excellent or the traditional or the standard level of support, there's a whole other dimension that's possible. And I think what this book, for me, it inspires me. I mean, I've already had very superb support, but there's even more things I could, work on. And I need some of those playbooks, Stephen, which I think would be fantastic. And I think that's the inspiring part of it, is that not just 2x growth, but 10x in personal life as well as professional life is what's possible. I mean, just imagine if you could have all the freedom you want, doing what you love to do best. for your best audience. What does life look like then? That's what's possible. And it's the secret, because most people have a very standard or traditional view of that assistant. And we're like, yeah, no, there's a whole other dimension that people did not know was possible. Before we get to some of the more specifics about how people can learn more and that fabulous website, Ryan, so thank you for that. There's just some great stories, particularly of your clients as well as of us, in the book about what's happened once they've been superpowered. So what are some of your favorite people? There's just some great quotes in the stories of, again, it's mostly your clients. I know there's a good one of mine too. But let's talk about them, because we're not the only ones experiencing this. There's lots of other people that actually know exactly what we're talking about and are like, yes, and wanted to contribute to this book. Stephen?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's many, many of them, but one that really comes to mind is Bo Barron, who is a client who generously contributed to the book, but just to see not just the transformation that he's seen in his business and the freedom he's had, but literally the transformation in his relationships, to see literally, because I get to see him physically about once a quarter, to see the transformation in his health. I mean, he is like fit, ready to go. I mean, and a lot of that, he will give all credit back to Alice, who's his executive assistant, who's just really created Superpowered transformation, Superpowered Bo. It was all there. All the raw material is there, but just that sculpting and unlocking and unleashing of all the potential that was there has been really a blessing to see.
That is exciting. Ryan, what's one of your favorite examples of a transformation that you've seen?
I'll give you two. One is a client who is in the book, Jacob Emery, and he used a word that was so, I think, significant to me, and it was trust. That word, I think, reflects a big mindset shift that he made, but also the development of a relationship with a really highly effective executive assistant. To be able to trust means that you have the working relationship, you've got that glue that makes it feel okay to finally let go of things that you've held on tightly to, or you felt like you've had to do in the past. So the trust word was so significant to me. The second one was, I don't think it's actually in the book, but we had a client who had a habit, and when he was super stressed, he would rub his temple, and he would just absolutely rub that part of his hairline right off. I mean, he had this tiny little bald spot where he had just been rubbing his temple so hard from the stress, and bless his heart, right? Like, I don't think he even realized he was doing it. And, come to find out in the 30, 60, 90-day check-ins, we're like, what's going on here? And then we talked to him 6 months into his relationship with his executive assistant, and the hair's grown back. So it's not a promise we make to all clients that you'll regrow hair. We don't want to overpromise, but for at least one, it was life-changing in a totally unexpected way.
Oh my goodness, that is hysterical. Well, I sometimes joke that we talk about hitting the ceiling of complexity or frustration, and some people have hit it so hard they've lost hair over it. And of course, all the bald men in the workshop just go like this. So I can see that happening. But it is true. And I know when I've been super stressed through some silly decisions I made, there's a huge impact on health. And that can show up with hair loss. It can show up with elevated, not good levels in terms of cortisol and stress and in your blood and everything else. So it's pretty powerful. And I think one of the things for me that's been true is I didn't even realize I was stressed because I was so used to it. And all of a sudden it goes away and you're like, oh, I'm calmer. I'm more peaceful. I'm easier to be around. I don't fly off the handle. I don't have as much of a temper. Like, you just don't realize just how much you were holding, how much you were just dealing with just because you always have. It's like you and I were both of the same. Like, if you've been doing it on your own for a really long time, you get some really strong habits of handling it. And when you finally get the release from that, it's kind of a big deal.
It is. And to your point earlier, a lot of people will settle for good and not go for great in this relationship, right? And there's a strong pull to the path of least resistance once you have just a little bit of relief. And you're like, well, that's at least something, right?
Yeah.
But that's the delegation. That's the 2X. It's not the 10X. And so we've actually had to have conversation with the client. We'll say, look, we've seen a lot of these relationships develop over time, and yours isn't where we like to see it to be. The match just isn't right here.
Right.
And we think that we should bring somebody else in because we think that even though you think things are going well, we think that there's a whole different level, a whole nother gear you could get in this relationship.
I love that you point that out, that you've got really high standards and you encourage people to go to an even higher level. That's kind of wicked.
It's crucial. And I think it's also important to have the right feedback loops built in for the entrepreneur, because a lot of times we don't know what we want. We're so in frustration or this or that. I mean, when I joined Coach, I thought golf was going to be rejuvenating, right? I had to go golf to realize I love being outdoors and love being with my friends. So even, as we grow, those things change. So having the right person that you're connected with and the right mechanisms to continuously update the vision as you're growing together is transformational, right?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. All right. Oh my gosh, we could talk forever. This is how this whole thing started anyway. So how can people find the book? How can they access the resources, all of the good things? Ryan, you're my go-to who for these kind of details. So if people want to track down Superpowered or Superpowers HQ, how can they do that?
Yeah, for sure. So the book, first and foremost, check out the website. You know that none of us are responsible for it. Take a look at Leslie's handiwork, superpoweredbook.com. And on there are the resources that we mentioned in the book. So Ideal Assistant Blueprint, 12 Stages of Burnout Guide, Entrepreneurial Attitude Exercise, the Strategic Coach Impact Filter, who a lot of the listeners to this podcast, of course, will be familiar with. And then we also included our full list of questions that we ask at the end of our first 3 months. And so there's a communication builder, entrepreneurial time system discussion, and then a teamwork tips resource there as well. So tons on the website if you go check that out. Tools that we use literally in the business every single day. And then, of course, we live at superpowershq.com.
Perfect. And of course, if you're interested in Strategic Coach, it is strategiccoach.com. One other aspect I want to mention is that the book and the podcast, which, was the instigation for the book, has been very instrumental for assistants. If they want to up their game, if they want to become even more of a support partner, entrepreneurial executive assistant, they're like, oh, I could create a playbook. I could take lead on this. So it actually gives direction. And I would say kind of playbook might be a bit of a strong word, but it gives permission for them to go up to the next level and be that superpowered assistant. So I think it actually, even though it's primarily written for entrepreneurs, it is actually incredibly prescriptive for people who have that supportive chip, have ambitions, want to grow. And this is the roadmap. It is very, very cool. So I think it actually addresses everyone in this secret, which I think is also exciting. So thank you, gentlemen. It has been such a pleasure working on this book with you, Ryan, and you, Stephen. And again, shout out to Carrie and his amazing team at Igniting Souls and our writer, Lynn. Thank you. Thank you. And the entire team, Ruthie and everyone who helped put this book together. It was totally an act of love and passion and getting all the things figured out. Thank you, Ryan and Leslie, for the website. We're very appreciative. And again, I'm just excited for what is possible for people. Again, Superpowered, the secret that helps every entrepreneur eliminate the suck, 10x their impact, and have more fun in work and life. So for me, that's the recipe. So I think that's really powerful. So anything else, any closing thoughts, remarks, anything like that before we wrap up?
Oh, it's just gratitude, Shannon. This has been such an incredible journey that started as something completely different at the beginning and turned into something really wonderful by the end. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Stephen?
Yeah, I would echo the gratitude and just bringing your unique ability and your you-ness, including the golden voice, to the audio book.
That's right. You don't have to listen to Stephen and me if you want to get it in audiobook form. That's right. A huge advertising bonus.
We're actually all on it. You tell your great stories. So it's actually very interesting to listen to, which is awesome.
And then just a word of encouragement to anyone listening, whether you're an assistant or an entrepreneur, don't settle for faux freedom or faux growth, right? I mean, Elvis Presley once snuck into a restaurant and sang "Love Me Tender," okay? He did it at a steakhouse and he competed as a impersonator and he sang "Love Me Tender." And the audience gave a faux applause, and he got third place from the judges as an Elvis impersonator. I do not want anyone in this audience settling for anything less than the real deal. So get it for yourself.
I love that. Don't settle. That is a perfect thing to wrap up with. Again, Superpowered, the secret that helps every entrepreneur eliminate the suck, 10x their impact, and have more fun in work and life. So that's what we all want for you. Thank you so much for listening. Again, thank you, Stephen and Ryan. Always a pleasure. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know at questions@strategiccoach.com. And as always, here's to your team success.